In this video, we will be talking about a concept called encapsulation in Python. So, the basic definition of encapsulation is that encapsulation is about protecting data inside a class. All right, so it means keeping data or properties and methods together in a class while controlling how the data can be accessed from outside the class. So this prevents, so what it does is like basically you define the properties and methods in a class and you ensure that the data you ensure, or you can say you control how that data can be accessed. So what it does is, wait, what it actually does, like why we do that. So it prevents accidental changes to your data. One, no one can make changes to your data all out of nowhere. And it hides the internal details of how your class works. So you can still access the data, but in a very limited manner. And you can also hide how the functionality of your class and everything. Now let's talk about some private properties. So let's say you want to create a private class. All right. So in Python, you can make properties private by using a double underscore, sorry, by using a double underscore like this prefix. All right. So let's say I want to create a class, create a private class, actually private class property named age. So all I have to do is I'll create a class person. I'll define init function in it, self, name. I'll define the parameters. And then I'll say self dot name equal to name, self dot age equal to age. This I wanna make it a private property. So if I want to make it a private property, all I have to do is just put the double underscore before age. So now let's say P1 is an object, and then I create a class person and I'll do that, and 20, and then print p1 dot name. And if I want to do that, p1 dot underscore age, this one will cause an error. All right, because this is not correct. All right, so let's look at it. Encapsulation.py. Let's save it and let's run it and look at its output. Now, if you look at it at the output, it is exactly showing us person object has no attribute age, exactly what we thought that will throw an error. So private, one thing that must be noted is private properties cannot be accessed directly from outside the class. All right. So now let's talk about get private property value. Now let's talk about it. So let's say you want to access a private property. How would you do that? And you can create, so all you have to do is create a getter method. So use a getter method to access a private property. All right. So let's say there's a class person, define init, self, name, age, self dot name equal to name, self dot age equal to age, define get age, self. I'll create a get function for it, and now I'll say return me the self dot age. All right. Now let's create an object v1 and person. Now I'll name it for Irum and 20. Print v1 dot get age and save it. And now let's run it. So here it is. We have it. Okay, sorry. Let's first comment it out. The earlier one, this one. This one, we need to comment it out. Save. Now run it. So it is again throwing us an error on line 43 because age is a private property. But since we have already defined this get age function, then why is it not printing us out the get age this? So the problem is that I took these double underscores here while we had just one single underscore over here, right? So all I have to do is I remove that underscore problem, and now it is printing us as it is the way it should have printed out. All right. So now let's set private property value. Set private property value. So to modify a private property, you can create a setter method. All right. The setter method can also validate the value before setting it. So let's say use a setter method to change a private property. That's it. So let's say I'm creating a class person, define init, self, name, age, and now I'm gonna write down self.name, self.name equal to name, self.age equal to age. We defined a get function because we want to access the private property. So I'm gonna return self.age, and I'm gonna define set age and self age. And now if I set if age is greater than 0, so I want to set the age as self age equal to age. Else I'll print age must be positive. All right. And now let's create an object v1 equal to person, Irum 20, print v1 dot get age and print v1 dot set age. Let's say you want to set the age to something else like 20. Oh, no, not 20. Let's say you want to set to 25. And now we say print p1 dot get age and like this and save it. And now let's run it. So now if I run this, it should look like this, 20 and 25. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about why we should be using encapsulation. So some of the benefits encapsulation provide are as follows. So it provides data protection, it provides validation, it provides flexibility, it provides control. So by data protection, we mean it prevents accidental modification of data. When we talk about validation, it means you can validate data before setting it. And when we talk about flexibility, internal implementation can change without affecting external code. And you have full control over how data is accessed and modified. This is what control means. All right, so this is the basic definition, or you can say the basic benefits, some of the benefits out there of encapsulation are. So let's talk about use encapsulation to protect and validate data. All right. So let's take a class student and define init self name, two parameters that we're gonna pass, self dot name, and then self dot grade 0. And then let us define set grade function. That's gonna create this. We're gonna create this. So if 0 is less and equal to grade and less and equal to 100, self dot grade equal to grade, else print grade must be between 0 and 100. Now let us define get grade self return self dot grade. Now let's say define get status and self. If self dot grade is greater and equal to 60, return passed, else return failed. Now let's take an object student pass student dot set grade 85. Now let's say student dot get grade. And this is it. We're gonna print it out. Now student dot get status and save. And now let's run it. So here it is. It has passed. It is giving us the grade, and it is giving us the status, whether it has passed or failed. So now let's talk about protected properties. So like Python has a convention for protected properties using a single underscore prefix. All right. So let's create a protected property. Let's take a class person and now define init self name salary. We're gonna pass these parameters self dot name equal to name, self dot underscore salary. This is protected. We wanna make it a protected property. Okay, there's a difference in protected and private property. All right. So yes. So this is a protected property. We're gonna discuss it in a bit of detail in our class mangling, name mangling, basically topic in the coming topics. but you need to know there is a difference. So let's create P1 equal to person and let's say we want to pass down 50,000 as a salary. Now print P1 dot name and print P1 dot salary. You can access but shouldn't. All right, so this is how it works. So a single underscore is just a convention. You need to know this as well. It tells the programmers, it tells the programmers that the property is intended for internal use, but Python doesn't enforce this restriction. Or let's save it. And now let's run it. So person object has no attribute salary because we already know that it is a protected method, right? So if I wanted, okay, sorry. I again made the same mistakes of like I took the double score underscore, it should be single underscore. So now it should print it out. Oh, it is again saying no attribute salary. So let's look at the problem. Like what error are we making? We need to look at. All right. So we made a mistake in the private property. It's because it is a protected property. So we need to take this underscore single underscore because in the private property, we take the double underscore. All right. So let's save it and run it. And here it is. Now we can see the salary. All right. So this is it. Now let's talk about private methods. And so you can also make methods private using the double underscore prefix. So let's create a private method. All right. So let's create a class calculator. And I'm going to define again, we already know, define init self method self dot result equal to 0. Now let's say define validate and self number to we are creating this private method or function over here. If not is instance num int float. So we're gonna say we're gonna return false and then return true. Now let's say define add self number and if self dot validate num and self dot result plus equal to num else print invalid number cal an object calculator. I'll call it back calc add 10 add 5. Now let's print its results. So now if I print this calc validate it and I say 5, it will cause an error. Why? Because it is a private property, right? Look, this is a private property. So let's save it. Now let's run it. So here it is. If I commented it out, only then it. So just like private properties with double underscores, private methods cannot be called directly from outside the class. So the validate function over here, method can only be used by other methods inside the class. All right. Now let's talk about name mangling in Python. So name mangling is how Python implements private properties, private properties and methods. So when you use double underscores like this, Python automatically renames it internally by adding class name in front. So let's say, for example, age becomes person age. So let's talk about a bit, see how Python mangles the name. So let's say I take a class person and I say define init and self name age. I'll pass down these two parameters, self dot name equal to name, self dot age equal to age. So P1 equal to person 20. So now this is how Python mangles the name. So print P1 dot person, like let's say person, age. So, and this is how we're gonna get the age. It is not a recommended way, by the way, but still, let's look at it. Here it is. We got the age, and let's change the age so we can have some sort of idea, a proper idea. So here it is. You can see it over here. So while you can access private method properties using the mangled name, it's not recommended. It defeats the purpose of encapsulation then actually. So this is not a very recommended way, like not a recommended way, but this is how it is, because otherwise what's the purpose of encapsulation? Right. So anyway, this is how it is. You can